Welcome to Talaterra, a podcast about freelance educators working in natural resource fields and environmental education. Who are these educators? What do they do? Join me, and let's find out together. This is your host, Tania Marien. Today, my guest is Stephanie Rozzo. Stephanie is an award-winning freelance scientific illustrator. Her work has appeared in Popular Science magazine, in a field guide for Costa Rica, in educational materials, on consumer products, and she has also created a mural for the city of Monterey, California. Her clients include National Geographic, Clean Canteen, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and wineries in Northern California. Her work has been featured in exhibitions in California and New York. Stephanie is also the founder and principal educator for Nature Sketch Crate, a subscription service that not only inspires an interest in nature, but supports people in their exploration of it. Let's join the conversation. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today and for talking to us about Nature Sketch Crate and how you developed it and your work as a scientific illustrator.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You are a freelance scientific illustrator. Scientific illustration is a career that people don't normally think about. It doesn't necessarily cross their mind. But I know many scientific illustrators. I love scientific illustration. I've been a member of the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators since 2001. And I just love science communication that happens through that medium, all the different ways that it happens. How did you learn about scientific illustration? And when did you discover that you could blend art and science?
Actually, it was when I was an undergraduate and I was studying abroad in Australia. And when I went out there, the internet, it was a long time ago, but the internet wasn't great and it was hard to figure out what kind of classes I was going to take before I got there. And when I got there, they said the classes I thought I was going to take were not available. And they started placing me in different classes. And one, they found that I had an interest in art and science. And something they had that was unique was a class in scientific illustration. And I was very excited to find out that there was something I could do with art and science since I was earning my degree in ecology and evolutionary biology. And I had a lot of fun with it, kind of playing around with it when I was there, and didn't really take it too seriously. I just wanted to be a zookeeper, actually. So I went on to do that for a long time, to kind of put that focus, working with wildlife and at zoos. And then I kind of came to a point in my life where I really missed doing art. And at one of the places I was working at, the Desert Museum in Tucson, Arizona, had an art institute. And I met a few people through that. I took a class through Linda Feltner, who, if you were part of the genocide, you know Linda Feltner. And I took one of her classes and kind of started thinking, hey, this is really what I'd like to do. And I found out about the program at the California State University, Monterey Bay, and applied and got in and decided that that was what I was going to do. So I made a big change.
The program at CSU Monterey Bay began at UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Many years ago. And I've always been curious about it. What is that program like?
It's an intensive one-year program with some great teachers, and you get to be surrounded by a lot of, well, a few other students that are, you know, just like you, which is a lot of fun. They have interests in science and art, which is pretty unique. It was a lot of fun. It was a very intensive, though, because it's 1 year, and I was really able to refine a lot of my skills while I was there. So I think my style really grew a lot. My skills grew a lot. And I was able to start creating the artwork that was at the level I really wanted to. And I learned a lot about just scientific illustration and the different places you can take it and the different careers you could have. And we were required to do an internship as well. So I did the internship at Seychen Field Creek Station in Truckee. And then I also did one at National Geographic in DC with the magazine.
That's fantastic. When you completed the program, where did you go from there?
I went back to Monterey because that's where I wanted to live. And my husband had a job there. So we decided to stay there rather than pursuing jobs elsewhere. And I started to try to figure out how to have a successful freelance career. And I just did various freelance jobs and kind of took whatever I could while also volunteering at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, creating anything that inspired me, try to take some of that and create art on my own. Just trying to find my footing. And then I also started doing the mural for the city of Monterey. So I was doing a lot of different stuff. Nothing consistent. It was pretty all over the place. I also worked at a restaurant the whole time too. It was not a very steady pay.
Yeah, that comes with working independently. Yeah, that is one of the challenges for sure. Definitely one of the challenges. Yeah, the mural that you created for the city of Monterey was about a majestic oak that used to be at that location. How did you do the research for this project? Because it's a great story. How did you do the research? How do you work with a city like that and create the mural?
Yeah, I was working with a couple of people who had one person that had conceptualized the theme for the mural, and then the other person working with the city who had the historical background. And so they gave me a lot of information initially. And then I did a lot of checks with different professionals to make sure that things were as accurate as they could be. But most of the figuring out what exactly would be included and what the history behind it was all determined beforehand.
When did you decide to create Nature Sketch Crate? It's a wonderful service.
Oh, thank you.
And I've been painting with my mom.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. That makes me so happy.
It's great. And we're both enjoying it. And how did you come up with the idea? I mean, when did you decide that, okay, I have this idea, I'm going to act on it? And how did all this come to be?
Well, let's actually think where it started. So shortly after I had my first son, so I have two small boys, one's 7 and one is almost 5. They'll be 5 in a couple months. And shortly after I had my first son, I found I didn't have a lot of time to create art that I wanted to do. I had time for some very few freelance jobs here and there. And then that seemed to be about it. And that wasn't really fulfilling enough for me. I just look around and I'd want to paint everything. And I just was going a little crazy. So my painting style that I had developed prior to kids required me, even when I was sketching, require multiple layers of paint. It would take at least an hour or so to do. And once I had kids, I was like, I was thinking in my head, how do I still fulfill this need of creating art and having an outlet of relaxing while creating that art, so that when I have that very spare minutes away from my child. So I found I had to limit the amount of time, find a way to do this in this very small amount of time. So I started to sketch just anything I found out that I wanted to sketch, and I limited myself to only a few layers of paint. And then finishing that with ink lines so that I wouldn't have to build up the paint a lot. So doing something really quick. And I found it was helpful to use this technique if I was around live animals or just in a lot of different situations. And I had friends that were like, oh, that's great. You just did that so fast. That was amazing. And I was like thinking in my head, anyone can do this. It's something that I think anyone can do. And I started thinking maybe I should have a class. And then I had another kid and I was overwhelmed again and found even less time to do work. And then, let's see, Then fast forward to several moves, and then kind of started rethinking my whole self as a freelance illustrator, trying to figure out how I could make a steady income and balance my life with my kids and still be able to create some original artwork. So I think it was 2019, my sister sent me a subscription box for like an educational kids subscription box. And I didn't think it was any good. It was pretty poor quality. And I thought, wow, if people are buying this, I can definitely do one of these, and I can make it nice. So I started kind of formulating the idea for it and thinking like, okay, just each little step, like what would I want to include in this box? What would I want the lessons to be like? I always wanted to teach this sketching method. And I have to say, I was also inspired by paint nights and how people were painting and they were interested in painting, but I didn't feel like they were really learning ways to apply those skills, or they were creating things with, and they still do, with really poor quality paints. And so I thought that was really interesting. I think like maybe I could find a way to help people create something that actually is really nice and be able to create stuff on their own as well, like build on those skills. So that's where I started formulating that class. And I just really have been took the whole thing tiny step by tiny step by tiny step. So I would get overwhelmed by the idea because it's such a big thing. Just starting a brand new business is a big deal. So starting a whole new product was a big deal, and a class is a big deal. So I was taking each tiny bit and formulating it and figuring it out. I didn't know if it would work. So once I figured out what I wanted to include in the crate and what I wanted to make the lessons, what I wanted them to be like, then I had to test it out and see if it would work. And I was kind of surprised that it did. I tried it out with several different people and was like, I don't know, let's see. And it worked. And I also remember I was so stressed out to show it to one of my colleagues, my professional colleagues that live here in Long Beach. She's a good friend of mine. And I was just like, here this is. What do you think? I've been working on it for so long. I showed it to a few other friends and family members and just acquaintances and different people to try to get feedback. Try to do a various age range, but definitely stayed in with all female, which in hindsight, I realized I should have tried to give it to some male test group participants as well. But I decided when I figured that out, I just was like, okay, it's time to move on with this. And if male participants want to do this, it's still going to be good for them as well. So after I did the test group, COVID hit pretty much right after. And so that set me back quite a bit. And then I picked myself up and kept figuring things out. I did a Kickstarter, which was a good way to kind of test things out and see, try to figure out a product launch method, learn a little bit about marketing and what I needed to have for getting people's interests and making sure people knew about it. So that was a good experience. And I also validated the idea as far as there were people interested in getting it, even though I didn't have any big marketing background. So when I was formulating a subscription box, I don't know how to even start this. And I started researching it the way I research just about anything through Google. And I found Cratejoy, which was really helpful. They do a lot of marketing and gave me a lot of guidelines that have lots and lots of information on how to start a subscription box. And some of it was a little dated, but because it's constantly changing, I think, the marketplace. But I think I figured it out okay. I got it going. And it's been helpful since too to have that, because I am currently on my own, working on this on my own. And I wanted to make sure it's something that would work before bringing anyone else in. And hopefully I'll be able to do that in the future.
What did Kickstarter teach you? What was the most valuable lesson you learned from that whole Kickstarter experience?
But I can't be afraid. I just have to do stuff. I just have to get out there and do it. I think that was the most valuable, and that everything takes a lot of time, and that people were really interested in Nature Sketch Crate.
So I learned about, and honestly, I don't remember where I learned about Nature Sketch Crate. I subscribe to lots of different things. I read a lot of different things. And so it came across my screen. I thought, oh, look at that. That's clever. I like that idea. And so I started a subscription, and it is so much fun to get this box and to open it up and see the packaging, the very natural rustic feel and look and feel of your packaging, of getting everything you could possibly, I could ever possibly think of. You've got the watercolor paper, the graphite paper for transferring the images, lessons, activities for the first 2 weeks of the month, an activity for the second 2 weeks of the month. It's all there. And then the watercolor as well comes as part of the package. And this is the first time I've used Dr. Martin's watercolor, because I've never used them before. I don't have any experience with them. I've with other types of watercolor, but not with that. And it's so much fun. I mean, it's just the water brush and all that. And so the materials I had, my mom already had some materials. But for people who do not have art supplies, you also provide that for subscribers as well, which is very convenient and very handy. Yeah. And so it is one. And the directions are great. There's videos tutorials that help the user see where a project's going, and you offer guidance on how to approach a project. Plus, there is the written directions for a project, and color, of course, is in the box. And then the nifty sketchbook, the hardcover. So you've got the front hardcover, and then the back cover is also a hardcover. You can save all of your work in there. And you put so much thought into this. How many ideas did you have? How many iterations did you go through before you came up with this package and what people receive today?
Oh, I'm not quite sure. It was just a long step-by-step tiny process. And that's kind of like what I talk about when I'm teaching about painting, is overcoming things that look like they're hard to do. You just take it little step by little step by little step. So I really don't remember, but it was a lot. I know even figuring out what kind of watercolor to use was really hard. That is a story on its own, because I like to use a water brush when I sketch, but before I would just use, the tubes and have them in a half pan. That was usually what I did. But I started researching how to put that in the box and how to make it a valuable product, and how to make it so that it was easy for people to color mix. And since I was making a box for beginners and people who hadn't really painted before, I started exploring the liquid watercolors as an option and finding that they were just a perfect fit for this, because you can like in the lessons, you can put exact numbers of drops of paint and get the right color without too much difficulty. Whereas if you're using half pans of paint, you're going to pick up a different amount based on how hard you put your brush down or how many times you kind of put your brush over that paint. And it's really hard to describe in a lesson that's virtual, or I can't even imagine in person, unless you're seeing someone pick it up. It's just so much easier just to have the liquid watercolor. Plus, they were so vibrant. And P.H. Martin's has been really great working with me and getting the paint and everything as well. And they're local. So it doesn't take a lot for them to ship anything. It's not like a big shipping cost as far as on the environment. So that's good. And some things I couldn't, everything I was trying to figure out how I could do things locally if possible, or no to low plastic, or try to be eco-friendly. But the longer I took on that, it was just taking so long. because there were things that I was finding I wasn't finding alternatives for. And if I kept looking for them, I would never launch my product. So eventually I decided that that would be a future goal, is try to make it more eco-friendly. But I have put a lot of thought and time into trying to make it as eco-friendly as possible using, like I said, the paint manufacturer that is a local paint manufacturer. Things like that. So, and using a recycled box, using a manufacturer that makes boxes here in the US and is recycles. Just small touches like that, or trying to find things that are compostable or easily recyclable or whatever, just to reduce the amount of impact that it's doing on the environment.
Yeah, you've done a wonderful job. You can see that when you open the box, because everything, the filling, the padding, of course, it's all paper, and it also gives a wonderful, look and feel when you open it up to see your surprise. Yeah, it adds to all of that. So public events are slowly coming back. Do you have plans to do demonstrations and do environmental ed events or community events, or those types of events where you can engage with the public and bring attention to Nature Sketch Crate?
I'd like to. I haven't made real plans, but I have been exploring the idea of doing some in-person demonstrations for sure.
Yeah, and conferences as well, like STEAM conferences and all that,
Yeah, the it can be kind of just like conceptualizing the box alone. There's so many avenues. The box, this crate, and those lessons are so many ways that it can be used in so many different groups. It's hard to figure out where to start bringing it out beyond Crate Joy. Getting out, like you said, to places like STEAM conferences and other conferences or places, just really exposing it to people. But that definitely would be a step. I'm always making lists of all these different things I can do, but sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. So figuring out exactly where to start is the big thing.
What did your Kickstarter experience show you about who sees themselves in your product, in Nature Sketch Crate? Who did it resonate with?
I feel like it was a variety of people. So a lot of people wanted to buy it as gifts for people, and that's been a big thing. So it was hard to tell who exactly the correct market is for this product based on that. So it's been a little difficult just because it is something that a lot of people do gift. And people do give me some feedback, but it's pretty limited. So eventually going to conferences and stuff, figuring out where to start doing some in-person demonstrations would definitely help with that, figuring out exactly who this is best meant for, which I know is something I should know, but unfortunately I'm not 100% sure at this point.
And that is okay, because you learn all this by doing it, right? If you never do it, you're never going to find the answer. So no, you shouldn't. This is great. You shouldn't feel bad about it or apologize for it at all. I mean, there's lots of things I start that, it might not work. And but you started anyway, right?
Well, it works well for people like you and your mom. And then recently my 7-year-old son was having problems with focus and his handwriting and developing his observation skills. And I thought, well, I really want him to start Nature Sketch Crate. And I've been waiting to do it. I've been waiting until I felt like he was ready. And I finally sat him down, and one of the first things he said is, "This is easy!" and an exclamation. And he was so excited at the end to have something to show people that he did that was really nice. And it didn't look exactly like the picture, of course. It's from a 7-year-old, but it was something a lot more developed than he would have been able to do on his own. And he learned a lot of different skills from it by focusing and having to write straight lines and copying. And so I'm excited to keep having him do a lot more. And one of my first customers was actually a friend of mine who has a 7-year-old, and she just absolutely loves getting Nature Sketch Crate. And there's people who, I know a mom told me she likes to do it with her 12-year-old. There's a lot of teenagers that love it. There's a lot of retirees that absolutely love it. I have to say mostly women and children. So
it makes a perfect gift. It really does. It isn't a gift of art supplies. It's a gift for quiet. It's a gift of relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
It's mindfulness. It's a lot of things wrapped up in one package.
If you go and you take an art class at just about anywhere, it's not going to come with any art supplies, and it's going to cost you at least $60. So I'm hoping this is making it more accessible to people, because sometimes even just shopping for the art supplies or knowing that there is an art supply list or getting down to the class can be really hard for people. And I know color mixing is something that can be really overwhelming, or even thinking of what they should draw. And like you said, it's a very relaxing activity for a lot of people. And that's one thing I really wanted to do a lot of things when I was rethinking my careers from freelance to something else and trying to decide what direction I should be taking this. And I wanted to do something that would help people in addition to helping the environment, and a way to make art more accessible, because there were people that I knew that I knew that they could do stuff like this, but they thought it was impossible. And ways to make that I could create new art regularly, which I am always creating art now, and hopefully make a steady income as well. And I kind of see this right now because I am so small, and it is a passion project more than anything else, is that it's kind of like like an extension of my education. So I feel like when you go to school for anything, it costs a lot of money and time and dedication. And that's what I feel like I'm doing right now. I'm continuing that whole process right now until I can build it up into where I really want it to be. So I have a little steady income, not have to worry like I did when I was a freelance illustrator.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So where do you want it to go? Who do you want to see themselves in it?
I want anyone who's interested in doing art. I want everyone to be able to participate in it. I guess that might be why I have a hard time focusing on who my ideal student customer would be. I'd like anyone and everyone to be able to do it. It's being able to do art and nature, just like you said, can be very relaxing and renewing. And it really, you get to take yourself away from what you're doing and just focus on something else. And in addition to that, you get this product at the end that's beautiful no matter what. I feel like anyone can create a beautiful product with this, as long as you can follow instructions and hold a pen semi-steady. My 7-year-old does it okay. I think just getting out into nature alone or even thinking about nature is advantageous for people. And being able to do something and be proud of what you've been doing, or I include, I don't know if they're great, but some small things that people can do to help the environment, just because if someone just does that one thing, it might make them feel like they did something, because the problems with the environment can just themselves be so overwhelming. And I try to think, okay, well, what are some tiny things that people can do? What are some approachable things that would help people start feeling better about themselves so that they can make better decisions and live better lives, better environmental decisions?
I truly believe your Nature Sketch Crate is really also an effective science communication tool. You include natural history information about the subjects, and you mentioned making people or hoping people become more mindful of the environment that we live in. Do you think that in the future you might incorporate other types of scientific illustration into your subscription service? So like, graphics, or, like a cutaway graphic, infographic illustration, that helps people understand a process or, something that is happening in the world.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice thing to add for sure. Just anything to kind of, help people understand the world better. I think that there are so many more applications that are different offshoots from what it is right now for sure. There's so many, it seems like there's so many possibilities. And when I was conceptualizing Nature Sketch Crate, it was hard to not do too much, because I like to have, when I kind of base it on how I approach creating an illustration. And I think it's really important to know a little bit about the subject that you're creating an illustration of, at least a little bit. It helps you just create a more accurate illustration. And it also I keep it pretty basic. I try to keep it pretty basic so not to overwhelm people. But I try to give that basic information and some interesting facts just to help people connect with a little bit more. So taking that to show people how to communicate it in some other different ways other than just a picture, that would be an interesting offshoot for sure.
You have taught people about the natural world through public murals, through your magazines, through work with National Geographic. You've also contributed to the beauty in the world through your wine labels that you do for wine bottles and the illustrations that you do for consumer products. And you've created this wonderful subscription service for people to explore more on their own time, and while at the same time learning about plants and animals and other things about the natural world. Right now, at this stage in your career, when you look over your shoulder back at the trail that you've left behind or that you're creating right now, what do you see?
I'm not sure if I see much. I'm pretty hard on myself. I feel like there's so much more I can do, and what I've done so far is so minimal. I always wish I had more time. I always wish I could do more or more energy. And you saying it like that is very nice. Thank you very much. I just honestly feel like my impact has been extremely minimal so far. So I hope to do much, much more.
What's next for you?
More Nature Sketch Crate. Probably, like you said, getting out in person with people. This is definitely, it's something that people are really enjoying. And I've seen people really getting a lot out of it. And that makes me so happy, because that's really to the core why I created it. I wanted to help people. It's so nice seeing that and being able to see people creating things and relaxing and enjoying the whole process and having fun with it. So that's super rewarding. And probably continue on with that for a while, just until hopefully bring on some other people to work with me, because I'm on my own at the moment. And then and maybe move outside of my house would be really nice. So just little steps, just thinking right here, right now. In the future, long term, I would love, like you said, like we discussed before, to do more demonstrations in person, conferences and the like. I'd like to be able to have a place for people to come in person, to be able to check out what's going on, maybe have lots of different possible ideas, maybe a artistic community studio, a place where people can sketch and have instruction. But my ideas are constantly changing and evolving, so that could change a lot over the next few years. But short term, just continuing building Nature Sketch Crate, looking at a good product for people, and expanding outside of my home.
Well, you're off to a wonderful start. I can tell you that.
Oh, thank you.
So where can people learn about you online?
My website at www.naturesketchcrate.com. And I have a very active Instagram account as well as a Facebook that I'm very regular about posting to both.
To learn more about Stephanie and to see the fun surprises delivered to you by Nature Sketch Crate, visit the show notes for this episode at talaterra.com. And here you will also find the coupon code that Stephanie's created specifically for Talaterra listeners. This code is good for 20% off your first crate with a month-to-month purchase or 3-month prepay. The code is valid from March 11th through April 29th. Thank you so much for joining us today. See you next time. Talaterra is a podcast for and about independent educators working in natural resource fields and environmental education. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with friends and colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Tania Marien.